All right. So today, you guys are gonna watch us do a debate on the topic of offensive cyber operations. And this was like this year's like February topic, I think. I can't remember, or January topic, but this was last debate season. And the resolution is resolved. The benefits of the benefits of the United States federal government's use of offensive cyber operations outweigh the harms. And how this is going to go is basically like you're going to hear us do the debate. And after we read case, we're going to do rebuttals, right? But before each rebuttal, you guys are going to have the power to do a collective vote for what kind of strategy we should take, right? Like, oh, you should spend more time on like the first contention, or you should spend more time on the second contention. You should read more turns and delinks or something like that. And so those are the options for like both rebuttals. And then you're going to listen to us do a slightly flawed summary and final focus. And while you hear us do, all of this debate, the goal is that you should be flowing everything, because after the debate, you guys are going to redo. If you're a first speaker, you're going to redo the summary. If you're a second speaker, you're going to redo the final focus. And so make sure you're flowing really well. Just some background knowledge on like OCOs. Oh yeah, offensive cyber operations, which like the shorthand is basically OCO, right? So when I say OCOs, that just means offensive cyber operations. And what offensive, it's like basically it's like hacking, right? Like defensive cyber operations would be like, protecting yourself from like phishing or like from people hacking into you. But like offensive cyber operations is like you actively attacking other people, like other nations, like online infrastructure. And this, the reason why we chose this topic is because you guys are doing like, the nuke war topic, sorry, nuclear proliferation topic, right? And it's kind of related because generally all like the military things that are like related to like US military or like, US attacking another nation, those kind of topics, usually it all comes down to like, okay, so will this action deter your like adversaries, or instead will it like provoke them or like make them want to retaliate or increase miscalculation, right? So that's generally the way that like military goes. Will it like stop them from doing bad things, or will it just incentivize them to continue to do bad things against you? And does anyone have any questions before we dive right in? Okay, I'll assume that's a no. Unfortunately, Ishan refuses to join the call. Wait, can everyone hear me?
Yeah.
Okay.
No.
No?
No.
Now we can't hear you.
What? Okay, did anyone miss what I just miss anything of what I just said? Because Hannah said she didn't hear anything.
I was grabbing flow paper, so I didn't hear anything either.
I had speaker problems.
Wait, Jared, did you hear anything?
I was grabbing flow paper, so I heard everything until you said we have to flow this stuff.
Okay, so you have to, basically I said you have to flow, and I think there's gonna be like voting things that you guys can do for both rebuttals to like change our strategic decision making during the round. And then we're gonna give low-key bad summaries and final focuses so that you guys can redo them and make them better later. And that's why flowing is important. But then also the reason why we chose this topic, like I said, was that this is like all like usually all US military related topics are kind of similar in that the general idea is whether or not, you should doing XYZ action would deter your adversaries from, attacking you, or whether it will provoke them into attacking you more or cause like increased miscalculation, stuff like that.
Who's on
Okay,
Ash and who's
Ishan.
on Nick?
Ishan is taking a very long time. Hannah, do you have any more background information to add?
Wait, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Who's on Ash and who's on Neg?
Oh yeah, we didn't even flip. Okay. Well, I guess we can flip. Okay, Robert, heads or tails?
Heads. Wait, I think my headset's running out of battery. Kind of bad.
Hey Siri, flip a
What
coin.
tournament is?
It's heads.
Okay, Robert, do you want to be
Wait, guys.
sides or speaker?
Can we go first?
Yeah, guys.
Okay, Hannah, which side do you want to be then?
I don't really care. I think I like Ash, but
Okay,
I
like
can't
Av.
remember.
Okay, let's do Av.
So, guys, when's the tournament?
I low-key hate Av.
Okay, we can go Neg.
Actually, Neg sucks too. Okay, let's just do. Wait. Did we win more on Av or Neg?
It doesn't really matter.
You probably forgot everything at this point. So.
Alright,
Yeah.
yeah. Okay, let's just go Av.
Okay.
All right.
Okay, my headset's gonna die. Like in a few seconds.
Nicole, what topic are we doing?
OCOs.
Oh, Ishan's here.
So, Robert, what side are we?
What side are we?
You guys are
I
first
think,
on
are we
Neg.
Af or Neg? I forgot.
First on Meg.
So y'all, the rebuttal speakers, I'm gonna have to message you before you give your rebuttal, because before when we do the collective vote, I'm gonna ask the rebuttal speakers like what kind of responses they have, so that we can make our vote on like what they should be.
You can just like look through our blogs, right?
I asked a question in the chat. Can somebody respond to me?
There's no question that I got. What's your question? I don't see a question in the chat. So you just like say your question out loud.
Maybe
Question-
just it in.
Sorry, I got stuck. My question was, do this like the people who are spectating the debate, do we flow just the summary or do we flow everything?
No, you gotta flow everything, bro.
Okay.
Obviously. If you don't flow everything, how are you gonna give your summary? Like, I'm gonna talk about cats now. No. Flow everything, including Final Focus, even if you are a first speaker. Okay.
Wait, give me a second.
Should we turn our cameras on?
It's like kind of weird.
No, but you probably should.
Yeah.
Should I turn my camera on as your judge so that you can see when I'm making bad expressions?
Oh yeah.
That's great.
Are we all turning our cameras on? I think my camera's gonna messy still. Okay.
Okay, I have to go find the drive. Just give me a second.
Wait, what side are we again?
We're Neg, I think.
Okay. I have not
Oh my
debated
god,
it.
Robert, your hair is so long.
Yeah. I have not gotten a haircut since like 3 months.
I got a buzz cut.
I was too lazy. I was like, do I really want one? Not really.
Okay.
Oh god, what is this topic? I don't really like this topic actually.
Oh my god, Rob. Oh, shit.
Yeah,
Too
my
late.
hair is.
Yeah.
Wait. Who's gonna be second speaker? Oh, is Ishan second speaker?
Yeah.
Okay.
Wait, Sean was always second speaker, right?
I keep forgetting.
Yeah, it's gonna be an interesting round.
Shit,
Wait.
nothing is loading. I'm sorry.
Bro, can
Do you
you?
want to use my case or your case? I don't care really.
We can use my case or your case. I don't really care.
Alright, let me share mine with you actually.
It's on the drive, right?
Oh yeah, that's true. You can just photo it. You can actually pull up their case too, so we can preemptively respond to everything they say.
Okay. Hannah, where's your block file from No Sound?
Didn't you write some blocks?
I think I did. Let me check.
Yeah, you'll be
I
fine.
think we need to handle this box, otherwise we might lose.
Yeah.
Wait, they should be in the drive.
Like in your tab?
Yeah.
I'll check.
Hannah, you should take it off. Watch him read your responses against us.
I don't doubt that.
I think it's pretty obvious that's what, like. It's taking so long for all of this to load.
Repeat the resolution, Nicole.
Oh yeah, I'll also put it in the chat. It's resolved. The benefits of the U.S. federal government's use of offensive cyber operations outweigh the harm. OCO.
Wait, I cannot like her, Meg.
Too late. All right.
Wait, you're stuck net, Neg?
What is our neg even? I think our neg is like really bad.
Wait, which one? Yours or mine?
Mine.
Okay,
wait.
then just use ours because I think it has good empirics. We'll go with it.
Oh, is it the China one?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wait.
Oh, ew, ew.
Whatever, just go with it. I think we I think we
one
offered
single
it
on
away.
this topic with neg.
Okay, can we hurry up? It's literally been like 20 minutes.
Yeah, okay.
Anything.
Robert, just read ours, it's fine.
Which one's ours? Yours or mine?
Oh,
Wait,
well,
is
mine,
Robert
mine.
neg?
Just read mine. Yeah, we're neg.
Okay.
Wait, is it even in the drive? I see the zip file. It's fine. I'll just read mine. Whatever.
Okay, whatever. All right.
Okay.
Yo,
Is that
Ishan,
okay?
why do you like not put your stuff in the drive?
You're like sketchy ass. Okay, guys, don't
Okay,
feel
every
like
other time.
prepare all your prep.
Yeah.
Okay.
Please mute yourself if you're not talking.
Is everyone ready? Are my judges ready? Wait, no, is my judge ready? Opponent's ready. Okay. Shit. We negate contention when it's escalation. I have subpoints? What the heck? Oh shit. Let me get a timer out actually. I've not debated in so long. Okay. Yeah, this is kind of sketchy. Yeah. We negate contention when it's escalation. Subpoint A, Russia. Jensen 19 explains even limited OCOs can be misinterpreted and lead to inadvertent escalation. This summer, the Kremlin warned that repeated US digital incursions into Russia's power grid could trigger a cyber war between the two countries. Tensions with Russia are already extremely high. Repeated US OCOs will be misinterpreted, pushing us into full-on cyber war. Subpoint B is preemptive attacks. Wolf 18 explains Trump's goal to deter adversaries through preemptive cyber attacks. Problematically, Trump's plan removes interagency checks, compounding attribution errors. Wolf 18 finds that every time a country has initiated an unprompted cyber attack, it has led to more conflict, encouraging retaliatory attacks rather than deterring them. As a result, Josephine Wolf, a professor of cybersecurity, finds Trump's new cyber plan encourages the government to act recklessly in directing cyber attacks and will by design escalate conflicts. Overall, a cyber war with Russia would be disastrous, as Sanger 19 finds Russia has inserted malware that could sabotage American power plants, oil and gas pipelines, or water supplies in any future conflict. Straub 19 concludes that an attack now would cut off millions of people from basic necessities. Contention 2 is the cyber arms race. Emerding 18 explains that when the US goes on offense, other actors have an excuse to act as they want in cyberspace. A UN report on digital cooperation explains perceptions of an unfair cyber advantage created through US pursuit of OCOs are a major factor behind tensions. This is empirically true, as Trujillo 14 writes that after the US developed its OCOs, over 120 other countries followed suit. This results in an overall rise in cyber attacks. Sobers 19 quantifies that the number of cybersecurity breaches has increased by 67% over the last 5 years. As a result, developing countries are taking billions out of essential social programs to fund cyber operations. JILA quantifies that government spending on cyber programs has increased by a factor of 10 over the past decade. Problematically, Dune 17 finds that a 1% increase in military spending leads to an 8.5% reduction in economic growth and a 20% increase in poverty. Contention 3 is cybersecurity. US OCOs exacerbate cybercrime by providing the tools for cybercriminals in 2 ways. First is to state actors. The NSA report finds that US offensive cyber operations don't just provoke counterattacks, they also teach our enemies how to launch their own. Zetter 15 finds that Iran replicated the techniques of attacks on its oil sector with malware targeted towards Saudi Arabia's oil conglomerates, knocking over 30,000 computers offline and causing widespread outages. Second is through non-state actors. Cyber weapons are instantly proliferated after use. Once deployed, cyber weapons are easily repackaged by terrorist groups. CSO 18 finds that as a result of Stuxnet, techniques that cost millions of dollars and thousands of hours of time to create now are available to other malware developers to adapt as new cyber weapons. Riley 18 quantifies that over 22 million pieces of malware now use US OCO code to destroy programs and degrade infrastructure. As a result, Gilbert 14 writes that the cost of developing a cyber weapon plummeted in recent years from $100 million to $10,000, making cyber tools widely available. There are 2 impacts. First is increased cybercrime. Morgan 19 quantifies that cybercrime damages will cost the global economy more than $6 trillion every year. This is devastating, as Rashid 12 concludes that a 1% decrease in global GDP increases global poverty by 12%. Second is recession. COP19 writes that the shift in aggressiveness over cyberspace and recent changes in tone of military leaders has led to the exponentially increased potential of cyber attacks being waged on our financial sector. Problematically, 917 writes that 60% of all cybersecurity experts believe that there will be a major attack in the next 2 years. The result would be catastrophic, as damage to banking infrastructure shakes investor confidence and would trigger an economic panic. As a result, the Harvard Business Review suggests that a cyber attack on the financial sector is the most likely culprit for the next major economic recession. This is critical, as Siegel 19 writes that the global economy is largely reliant on the success of US markets and American consumers, allowing an American crisis to quickly turn global, which the IMF finds will put 900 million people into poverty, and that's why we're proud to negate.
This is too good. Okay. Is everyone ready? And let my time begin now. We affirm resolve the benefits of the U.S. federal government's use of offensive cyber operations outweigh the harms. Contention 1 is terrorism. The U.S.'s use of OCOs has been integral to the fight against terrorism for 4 key reasons. First is through cutting networks. The National Security Archive 19 writes that cyber operations have been used to disrupt terrorist command and control networks, military-related critical infrastructure, and weapon capabilities, which inhibits battlefield coordination and enables ground troops to be more effective. Second is through counterintelligence. Goodman explains the usage of cyber espionage for counterintelligence has allowed the U.S. to gather critical information to preempt terrorist attacks, successfully preventing them from happening in the first place. Subsequently, ASAL 19 concludes that hundreds of terror attacks have been stopped by U.S. cyber operations, saving many more lives. Third is through freezing finances. Parmerlou 17 writes that cyber operations against ISIS has limited the group's financing activities by freezing overseas transfers. Crucially, Rastin 19 writes that ISIS has been slow to recover damaged systems precisely because an inability to transfer funds or buy overseas funds has limited the rate it has been able to procure new supplies like servers. Fourth is through stopping propaganda. Alfifi 18 reports that ISIS has exploited social media as a highly successful way to spread their propaganda and to recruit new members. Operation Glowing Symphony is a cyber operation that was conducted to shut down ISIS's social media presence and slow recruitment. Importantly, Rastin continues that ISIS's media operation was a shadow of its former self 6 months after the start of Operation Glowing Symphony, severely reducing ISIS's ability to recruit and spread propaganda. As a result, Rogers 18 writes that cyberspace operations have been critical in enabling the campaign against ISIS, which has lost now 98% of its territory. As a result, approximately 3.2 million Syrians and 4.5 million Iraqis now have a pathway to begin to rebuild their cities and lives. Contention 2 is Stuxnet. Prior to 2010, Iran's nuclear programs were proliferating at an alarming pace. Thankfully, Zetter14 explains that the U.S. used Stuxnet OCO to destroy Iran's nuclear centrifuges with 0 casualties. 5 months after the launch of Stuxnet, the number of operational nuclear centrifuges was cut nearly in half. These operations have been critical to preventing a Middle East arms race for 2 key reasons. First, they were crucial to the Iran nuclear deal, as Sherman 18 writes that U.S. sanctions on Iran were ineffective as Iran prioritized its military over economy, explaining why they actually accelerated their nukes. Thus, Obama decided to launch Stuxnet in 2010, which is what got Iran to the negotiating table. Libicki 13 explains that because of our robust OCOs, Iranian officials believed that the U.S. could sabotage the nuclear program at any moment. Sherman assures that this perception is what drove them to accept the Iran nuclear deal with the U.S. in 2015. This deal was critical as Claire 18 asserts that if it forced Iran to get rid of 98% of their enriched uranium and thus prevented a nuclear arms race in the Middle East. Second, OCOs have reassured our allies. Stuxnet came at a critical time as Corrales 09 explains that Iran's massive nuclear program was threatening regional neighbors like Saudi Arabia, Israel, and Egypt. If left unchecked, Corrales posits that Iranian proliferation would spark a nuclear arms race in the Middle East. Thankfully, Graal 16 asserts that the Stuxnet attack reassured our allies in the Middle East that the U.S. could contain Iran's nuclear program, thus preventing our allies from developing nuclear weapons themselves. A nuclear arms race has 2 impacts. First, it would increase the chance of nuclear war, as the Delman 11 explains that since multiple actors would all be proliferating, a Middle Eastern nuclear arms race would have higher chance of escalating to conflict than the Cold War. Haaretz 18 finds that a nuclear conflict in the Middle East would cause 320 million deaths within the first 6 months. Second, a nuclear arms race increases the chance of conventional conflict. Even if a nuclear war does not occur, Kronig 12 finds that when countries acquire nuclear weapons, they become significantly more aggressive as they believe that they have the ultimate trump card. Thus, Kronig asserts that a nuclear arms race in the Middle East would increase the probability of conventional warfare by 950%, which would kill millions of people. Thus, we are proud to affirm. All right, Robert, ready for cross?
Yes.
Okay.
Wait. Yeah, sure. I don't really have any questions.
Okay.
It's gonna follow that. Let me get the timer out. Wait, are you ready?
Yeah.
Okay. Is it okay if I have the first question?
Go ahead.
Okay. Can you give me like a number for how much ISIS propaganda decreased after Glowing Symphony?
I would say it probably went from like, originally 100% to like 5%.
I mean, are you like, is 5% from the article, or you're just like coming up with
No, I mean, I'm enjoying it, but I would say that like if OCOs were used to a point where they were like critical to defeating like 98%.
Like, how does that even work, right? Like, how do you just like prevent people from posting on Facebook?
Obviously,
right?
you
like,
can't like take over land, right? Like, I think that's very clear. Can I have a question?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. Okay. So you give me like at the bottom of your like global recession, right? Like, first of all, like this 9/17 card, you say there's a major attack within 2 years, but it's already like 2020. There's no major attack, right?
Well,
so like,
I'm not saying that it has to happen in 2 years. I'm just saying that there's like a chance it happens, right? Like every bit we go on. Like,
so like, okay, so like the fact that we haven't had one within 2 years. So like, when would the next one actually happen?
Probably like the next month.
Wait, why the next month? Like everyone's like in a recession right now. Like, why do they have the like huge amounts of money to like destroy American like economy when it's like already destroyed?
You can destroy it more, right? Wait, I don't get your question. Like,
okay,
okay,
the fact that we're in a global recession right now, right? Like,
I mean, it can get worse, right?
Case,
like if our financial markets get hacked and like there's a sudden stock market crash, I'm pretty sure people get pretty upset still.
Okay, so they get pretty upset. So like,
right, well, and there's like 900 million people in poverty. Right, can I have a question?
Yeah, go ahead.
Shoot, I know, like, I'm pretty sure this timeline for Stuxnet is wrong, but I forgot. Like,
no, it's right. It's literally right. I don't know what you're talking about.
Oh yeah, okay. Wait, can I ask about Isao? Is that like sketchy or no?
No, I think it's perfectly fine.
Okay. Does Isao like a number for how many lives are saved? Like,
no, like he says hundreds of terror attacks, right? And like I think like if you think of terror attacks as like, for example, one suicide bomber, like they could kill like 20 to like 100 people, right? So I would say that's like a lot of people you're saving.
Okay.
Yeah. Can I have a question?
Yeah.
Okay, so you guys talk about like these like how like people will be like hacking right now and like all of these things, and how like increasing like OCO spending has like increased like 10 times over a decade, right? Like wouldn't like people like naturally spend more money as like new technologies come out, right? Like does it have to be because of the US? Like they probably would have developed on their own, right?
10 times is like a huge amount, right? And
I mean, it went from like
and, like,
$1 to like $10. I agree.
we also
that's
give
a super small amount.
like we give the causation too, right? We say like after the US developed its OCOs, even though this card is probably miscut, 120 other countries followed suit.
Oh
Yeah, 120.
That's time.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure like this entire second contention is like miscut, but whatever. This is ages ago. Couldn't we have done like something else that's not this topic?
That's not relevant.
Okay. So before Ishan gives his rebuttals, well, first of all, Ishan, are you gonna take prep? Because like I have to talk to the children, so you can count that as your prep time.
All right, sure. Just
wait. How does taking prep
count that?
Like...
Okay, wait.
Yeah,
Ishan, can you check your messenger also?
Wait, like how do I? Can I talk to Ishan or something or?
Yeah, you can like call each other.
Right, this is so much effort.
Okay, so before Ishan gives his rebuttal, we're gonna have a vote on what we think he should do strategically. So the first question that I'm gonna have everyone vote on, I'm gonna type it in the chat, and then if you want, you'll just like react to the message. So the first question is, should he spend more time on their first contention or their second contention? So I'm gonna put contention 1 and contention 2. Put a thumbs up on whichever one you think he should spend more time on. The first contention was terrorism, and the second contention was Stuxnet. Okay, I think that's like pretty much a majority. So, Ishan, you have to spend more time on contention 2 than on contention 1.
Contention 2 is Stuxnet, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Great.
Okay. The second question is basically what kinds of responses should he read? So, I don't know what kinds of responses Ishan has. That's fine.
I could go over that. It's just like general, if you want.
Yeah.
Okay. So first I'll just go. Okay, this isn't prep.
Just
okay.
say that what kind of response it is.
Yeah. Okay. So on terrorism, I was going to mitigate. Then I was going to delink cutting networks to being effective against fighting ISIS. The info thing, I was going to, attack their east south north because it's east south. Or is that too much? Should
I? Just say like, do you have like more, like what's the most common response that you had?
Okay. Yeah. The most common response. Let me check my response. I kind of cut and paste.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I think the top line response I was going to give was that you can't kill a terrorist with your computer.
Wait, shh! Don't say the response. Just say the style of response.
Oh, my bad. All right.
Yeah.
I was going to. My top response is mitigation.
Okay. So I guess the strategy question should be after he reads mitigation, should he read delinks or should he read after he reads mitigation responses, should he try to read turns or delinks or non-uniques? So turns is one thing, and then delinks and non-uniques is the second thing. So I'm going to put those two. So he's going to be reading mostly mitigation responses, but after he reads the mitigation responses, what other types of responses should he be layering? And then after he gives this speech, after he gives this speech, while we like wait for Hannah, I guess, I'll talk about y'all's decisions. Okay. I think that's probably a majority vote for D-Links and non-uniques. So Ishan, read mostly D-Links and non-uniques after the mitigation responses. Okay. I think he's still taking prep, so we'll just wait for that.
Hannah, please check your messenger.
Wait, what does your second message mean?
All right. Is everybody ready? George, are you ready? Or Sabine, are you good?
Yeah.
Okay. By the way, what type of responses was I supposed to read the most of?
After you read mitigation responses, it was supposed to be non-uniques and D-Links.
Non-uniques and D-Links. All right.
Like
Okay.
it could be either or, but like
Either or. All right.
Yeah.
Okay. Time starts now. Okay, 2 observations on their terrorism argument. First of all, you can't kill a terrorist with your computer. Insofar as that's true, my opponents must provide evidence that specifically talks about how crucial offensive cyber operations are for soldiers to combat ISIS and other terrorist groups. I'll get to that later. But then second, Cato Institute concludes that even by conservative accounting, the war on terror has been a failure, nor has the war on terror made Americans appreciably safer. I would contend that the US using OCOs to help further the war on terror, and the fact that the US hasn't pulled out troops even though ISIS diminished, demonstrates the fact that even though OCOs have been successful there, it isn't showing a definable impact there. It's not like because we destroyed ISIS, now American troops are able to go home, et cetera, et cetera. So I don't really see an impact there. But then some responses. First of all, OCOs are critical to counterterrorism. Offensive cyber operations are not as important a part of counterterrorism efforts. Navy's 170-page report in the fight against ISIS said the word cyber was never used. Instead, they outlined in support of assisting the fight against ISIS to degrade communication, reduce the flow of material money, as well as reduce ISIS's position. U.S. defensive officials have offered a campaign of thickening airstrikes as the only solution. In a 170-page report on the U.S.'s strategy to fight ISIS, they never used the word terrorism, and they never mentioned anything about what my opponents are talking about being critical. I would trust the Navy more than this one random guide that they tell you connects cyberspace operations to being critical to stop ISIS. Then Kenner in March in 2019 points out that in its effort to fight ISIS financially, Washington has been forced to rely on a fundamentally different strategy than it employed in its military campaign, but it does not involve OCOs. Instead, the main weapons at its disposal are sanctions and denying them access to the international financial system. Then onto this idea that some of Stuxnet. Okay, a couple of responses on Stuxnet. First of all, Stuxnet didn't have any unique achievement. According to the Cato Institute, Iran had demonstrated a willingness to engage in diplomacy with the United States and make concessions on its nuclear program long before Stuxnet. What Cato Institute is telling you is that Stuxnet was an unnecessary use of OCO operations for a problem that would have been solved through peaceful negotiations. This created two massive negative impacts. First of all, turn, because the International Atomic Energy Agency reported that during Stuxnet's attack window in 2009 to 2010, Iran increased the production of uranium from 80 kilograms per month to 120 kilograms per month. That's why the International Atomic Energy Agency concludes Stuxnet spurred Iran to boost production of its nuclear weapons. Cato Institute furthers that Stuxnet motivated Iran to launch multiple waves of cyber attacks against American banks and Saudi Arabia's Aramco oil company. Defense Secretary Leon Panetta said, Iran's retaliatory cyber attacks were the most destructive attack that the primary has seen, costing a minimum of $20 million. That's why Cato Institute concludes Stuxnet has failed to achieve its objective to delay the Iran nuclear program and reach concessions. But then my opponent's main impact here is this idea of achieving the Iran nuclear deal. I would contend that now, since the U.S. has withdrawn from the Iran nuclear deal, and we're not seeing some giant conventional warfare in the Middle East specifically because of that, and we're not seeing anything related to that. And so I think my opponents are overblowing this sort of idea that offensive cyber operations are a nuclear deterrent. I don't think anybody would think that because someone else can hack my one nuclear weapon, it suddenly is a reason not to go into conventional warfare if I don't attack a country, and not a reason to stop producing nuclear weapons. But then on top of that, I would contend that in the Middle East, the form of conflict doesn't stem from geopolicy. Instead, it stems from a religious divide as well. And so I would contend that even though that may be true that cyber operations are a deterrent in the Middle East, even if my opponents prove that to be true, I would still contend it doesn't stop the conflict because the conflict is religious. It doesn't have as much to do with geopolicy.
Hey, Ishan, can I get the date on the card? The first piece of evidence you read about how Iran was willing to engage in diplomacy.
Yeah. Uh, 2017.
Okay. Wait, when does it say Iran was willing to engage?
You want me to just read you that card real quick?
Yeah.
Indeed, Iran has demonstrated a willingness to engage in pragmatic diplomacy with the United States and make concessions on its nuclear program long before Stuxnet.
Okay.
Okay, so while Hannah's, I guess, like thinking, we're gonna change potentially the course of her thinking with more questions. So the first question is, how long should Hannah spend frontlining as opposed to going over their case? So there are, I'm going to give you guys 3 options to vote on. The first option is that she spends 1 minute frontlining and 3 minutes on their case. The second option is 2 minutes frontlining and 2 minutes on their case. And the third option is 3 minutes frontlining and 1 minute on their case. So I'll put those. Okay, I'm gonna wait like 20 more seconds in case anyone else wants to vote. Okay, Hannah, you have to go 1 minute your case, 3 minutes their case. You can have like a tiny bit more time. So like if you went 120, that'd be fine.
Okay, sure.
Okay, the second question I'm going to ask is which contention should Hannah prioritize frontlining? So should Hannah prioritize frontlining her first contention or her second contention? So okay. Hannah, you have to prioritize your contention too.
Okay. Okay. Is everyone good? Let's start on our first contention. He makes a bunch of analysis that's all mitigatory and is all very shallow. He first reads that we can't kill a terrorist. Second, he reads that the war on terror is a failure. And third, he reads that like OCOs aren't very important. All of these are very, very shallow responses. Realize OCOs are actually critical to conventional counterterrorism because of our second link, where which is completely undercovered, which indicates that OCOs are critical towards gathering counterintelligence and espionage. And the reason why that's important is because we need this information in order to have these airstrikes that he talks about and have so we know where to direct troops to and actually fight terrorism, which means that this single link gives us the impact in our case in our first contention because it's still critical to actually enabling all the stuff that he talks about in his third response. Also on his thing about how the war on terror is a failure, this is specifically in response to jihadist attacks against the United States, but I would say the war on terror is a success in terms of getting rid of ISIS's control. And the reason why that's critical is because ISIS's control is critical towards actually conducting genocide in the Middle East. On our second contention about Stuxnet, can someone turn pause? Who's static?
What?
Ishan?
No.
No, I think everyone was muted. Maybe it's just you.
Wait, are we talking or no? What happened?
Wait, what's happening?
Wait, what?
Hello, Hannah?
Hannah asked a question in the chat. She said, "Can you hear the static?"
There's no
Wait,
static.
Hannah, you're muted.
You're muted.
Hannah.
Oh, no.
Hannah! You're muted. Okay. You're muted again.
Can I unmute her?
Yeah, maybe.
No, I can only mute her. Oh, wait.
Okay, Hannah. I think we can hear you now. Maybe she can't hear us. Hannah, what's happening? Hannah.
Hannah, maybe try disconnecting your AirPods and just using your computer mic.
You're muted again. Who keeps muting Hannah?
No, it's when she puts her AirPods in, it mutes her.
Oh. Just disconnect your AirPods, girl.
This is fun.
Technical difficulty.
Okay, while Hannah is doing that, let's have a discussion about what's happening right now.
I'm getting so much free prep right now. It's great.
Yeah, wait, let's talk about the decisions that y'all made.
Yeah.
So first for Ishan. Okay, so the first thing that y'all said was to go for their contention 2 in rebuttal, which is good. Their contention 2 is obviously has a bigger impact and more length than their contention 1, so you need more time to read responses to that. On the turns versus delinks and non-uniques, I think this was interesting. So if Ishan is reading mostly mitigation responses, I'd say mitigation responses are typically less strong of responses than delinks or non-uniques. But I think that mitigation paired with turns can actually be really powerful because you get full access to their link when you read the turn, because you can say oh, mitigate it in this scenario, but in our scenario, the link is still strong. Or if you're mitigating the impact, then you're reading a link turn, but your impact can really outweigh whatever impact they had originally in their case, if you can actually implicate your turn. So I think that strategically, if you have a lot of prep done and you have good turns, then I think reading mitigation and turns is really powerful and strong. But if you don't have very good prep and you're really unsure, it's probably safer just to read delinks and non-uniques, because you might not have the ability to implicate your turns that much, and it's usually stronger to keep reading delinks, because judges will buy that a little bit more than they'd buy a sketchy turn that comes out of nowhere. So I can definitely stand by the decision that was made. And then for the decisions on Hannah's, I think that frontlining, it really depends on your strategy for the rest of the round. So when your second rebuttal, if you decide to go for 2 minutes your case and 2 minutes their case, then you know that most of the round you're going to be pretty offense heavy. So in your summary, you're going to go mostly for your own case. But if you spend 1 minute frontlining and 3 minutes on their case, then in your summary, you're probably going to have a decent enough blend of offense and defense. I think it also comes down to who you are as a debater. If you don't feel like you're very comfortable frontlining fast, then you should probably just pick 2-2 to be safe. I think the ideal debater would do 1 minute 30 frontlining, but I think that that's also really hard. So I think the 1 minute on her case, 3 minutes on their case is also a really safe decision that probably most intermediate debaters would make. And then I definitely think that frontlining her contention 2 more than her contention 1 is the right choice, because I don't think they're going to go for their contention 1 unless they really want to. And their contention 2 also has a lot of clash with the neg case, because their neg case talks about how Stuxnet teaches state adversaries, and their contention 2 is no, Stuxnet was really good. So it's probably good for them to frontline it in case she wants to read it as a cross application later in the speech.
One other tip that I learned, because I lost a lot last year, which gave me good experience. A lot of the time, the reason that we would lose is because we got so caught up on our opponent's case and what they were saying that we spent the majority of our later speeches just talking about their case. And so when the judge looked at their flow, all they looked at was what our opponent said. And we're not the experts on what our opponents are saying. They are. They spent the time researching and developing that case. So if you want to increase your chances of winning, try to get the judge to look at what you know the most about, which would be your case. So spend more time on the offense is my advice in that aspect, especially if you have different, or if you have lots of clashes. You want the judge to look at the clashes from your perspective.
Yeah, definitely. I think you probably tell too, Hannah went a little bit overtime originally on how much she was frontlining. 1 minute frontlining is really hard to do, to be honest. I think in the ideal world where you only have to go for one contention because you think that like that one contention is strong enough to win you the round and that you can win Clash on it, it's probably fine. But yeah, definitely what Sean's saying about going harder on your own offense.
Yeah. Okay, so my AirPods had like some problem, which is really bad. I'm gonna start on my C2, 1 minute in.
Wait, your C2 or our C2?
My C2.
Oh yeah.
Go on to our C2. I'm going to answer the turn. He says that Stuxnet increased nuclear production. My opponent clearly does not understand how Stuxnet really affected Iran's nuclear program. The production per centrifuge increased, but now they have less centrifuges. So they try to make up for the centrifuges we destroyed by enriching more, but Standard 15 tells you that holistically on net is still decreasing enrichment by 15%. Let's move on to their case. On their first contention about escalation, first they talk to you about how like it's going to result in escalation. 3 big responses. First, you delink it, as Bogart 19 finds that cyber attacks are at a literal bottom of the escalation ladder. Cyber attacks happen so often between nations that nations never actually act to escalate. Second, you turn it, as Soulminer 19 writes, that not using OCOs gives enemies an incentive to keep on attacking us because it creates the perception of weakness. In context of Russia, what would happen if we didn't actually attack them using OCOs is that they would actually attack us more because they think that we're weak, so they can continue to attack us. That's why, even though we've been using OCOs for 30 years, the Council of Foreign Relations 18 writes that no one has ever died from a cyber attack. Third, Schneider 819 finds that countries are less prone to actually escalating with cyber attacks because there's no pressure to escalate, and nations can actually manage tensions behind the scenes when negotiations or de-escalating. For example, in November, we hit Iran with an attack on their military computers, but Barnes tells you they haven't even tried to escalate. On their impact about cyber war, you turn it, as Chachak 19 tells you, as state-backed cyber attacks had never resulted in retaliatory cyber strikes by victim governments due to inherent fear of escalating. People don't want to mess with the US because that means we can cyber attack them back, which is a unique benefit to the US developing cyber weapons. On their second contention about arms race, 3 big responses as well. First, you non-unique, as Sanger 19 tells you that the Cyber Command, which conducts OCOs for the US, was created in 2008 in response to Russia hacking us first. What that means is that the paradigm was shifting anyways, even without the US. The US isn't the only country in the world that uses OCOs. We would contend that the world would compete amongst itself and with other countries like Russia or China, so the US actually isn't a linchpin to the cyber arms race. Second, remember, paradigm shift is inevitable, as Hughes 16 tells you cyber warfare is just so cheap that development's going to happen no matter what. Like, if you look at their second contention, it's very contentious, right? There's no way that entire technology sector like developed out solely out of one single government. Second, other countries are going to always have a reason to develop cyber weapons. As Hinote tells you that if we stay defensive, it tells other countries that we're weak in the cyber domain, so our adversaries want to attack and develop more to gain advantage over the US in a domain we're weak in. That's a unique turn. It's also a non-unique through contention 3. Also, on their impact is like literally not true about like the Middle Eastern Krata, as University of Cambridge 18 finds there's no evidence of a trade-off between spending more on the military and less on public services. On their contention 3 about cybercrime, they talk to you about like reverse engineering. First, remember, stolen code isn't a harm of the US using OCOs. These tools they say were stolen way before we were used them. Second, if other actors don't steal from us, they steal from Russia or China or the UK. Remember, it's non-unique. And finally, on their impact, they tell you small businesses are facing attacks. They don't terminalize how much is the actual harm of US OCOs. We would contend attacks are going to happen no matter what, because according to Verizon, other outside actors use cyber attacks to steal technology or IP or money, not because they want to get back at the US.
Cool. Can I have the first question?
Yeah.
Is there slow enough? All right, never mind. Okay, so you said that it shows countries we're weak if we don't attack them. Is that only applicable in the cyber domain? Because I don't see, just because the US doesn't nuke another country, it doesn't show them that we're weak.
No, so the US has the best nuclear arsenal in the world, basically, which is the reason why people don't attack us, right? But the thing with
why don't people attack North Korea or
actually use them? Because other countries won't know what cyber operations we have if we don't use them, right? It's not like cyber operations aren't as apparent as nuclear weapons. Can I have a question?
Sure.
Yeah. So on your which contention are you gonna go for?
I don't know what you mean by that.
You have 3 contentions. It's gonna be kind of hard to collapse. Which one are you gonna?
All 3.
Yeah. We'll figure it out.
Okay.
But can I have a question?
Yeah.
Okay, so you talk about how nations don't want escalation, and like that's never the intent. So are you telling me that none of the attacks that we've never ever seen a retaliate?
Yeah, that's what
an
the
act of-
trash evidence
So
is.
so Stuxnet was not an example when the Secretary of
Yeah.
State literally said that Iran was attacking us back in retaliation, and it cost us $20 million.
In retaliation to Stuxnet, they didn't even have
In
cyber
retaliation.
capabilities in Stuxnet before.
You
They-
completely drop our entire point about that, where we tell you that 20 million pieces of malware were created by that.
Oh yeah,
One
okay.
specific
20
way.
million malware card is like way miscut. I like wrote your case, right?
Okay, well, you can't say
Bad.
that the Secretary of State was lying when he talked about how Iran was retaliating against us, using our Stuxnet technology against us, and
Okay.
cost the
Two-
U.S.
two
economy
things.
$20 million.
First, they didn't retaliate to the U.S. Against the U.S., they actually used this technology to attack a corporate business, which means that it's not actually in political retaliation. It was probably just to like steal money. And
Okay, so political
remember the
retaliation.
non-unique I read? It doesn't matter if they stole it from the U.S. because no matter what, they can get it from their allies such as Russia. Remember the response I read to you, which tells you that Russia had much better cyber capabilities before us, developed long before us.
Then why did they use our technology when they hacked us? Because the Secretary of State himself said they used our technology. So if they have so much better technology, why did they wait until the
Because
U.S.
it was apparent.
Why did they wait until the U.S. attacked us?
Oh, that's because Iran didn't have the technology, right?
I thought you said Russia gave them the technology.
No matter what, either from the U.S. or from Russia. It doesn't matter if we attack.
No,
them.
but you can't have it both ways. You can't say that, because what you're telling me is that Iran didn't have the technology before Stuxnet. But then what you're telling me is their best buddy Russia.
Let's think about this, right? If Iran doesn't have cyber weapons, and then it's like,
But you
shoot, I
said
need
that
to
Russia
buff up.
gave them to them.
Either they can ask Russia to give them cyber weapons by requesting, or they can get it from the U.S., right? Like,
why didn't they request them long before? You said that it's been going on for 30 years.
How should I know?
Well, I can tell you why, because you keep diverting attention away from a clear timeline of events, which is the U.S. hacked Iran. Iran stole the technology we used to hack them with, and they hacked us back. And I keep asking you this: why didn't they take Russian technology and hack us back with it? If Russia has all of this technology implemented in our infrastructure, why didn't they use one of those? If their best buddy Russia could have just given it to them. You're saying that they can just request the technology.
They weren't allies with Russia back then, but what
They
I'm saying
weren't
is that
allies
they
with Russia like 4 years ago.
That's
No,
way over time.
4 years
And
ago,
this is a conversation, not a series of questions.
Stuxnet was 10 years ago.
Okay.
Okay, whatever. I didn't know that. Okay, it's fine.
Wait, let me. This prep thing is so stupid. Okay, wait, let me call Ishan and then we'll
Yeah.
Okay, so they're gonna give like slightly bad summaries. Not bad, but slightly like not the best summaries they could possibly give. And then
Actually, I take that back. I think we should give the best summaries we can give so that like when they do it, it's gonna be even harder. So,
okay, sure. Never mind then.
best summary you can give, Robert.
They're gonna give like decent to best summaries. And then be thinking about the same way that I had Joel think about like what they should do for their rebuttal strategy. While they're taking prep, you should think about what they should do for summary. And then after the round, you can think more about what kinds of decisions like they could have made differently.
So it's and I kind of have to go. Bye.
Okay, bye.
Ishan, I can't hear you.
You guys are all muted if you want to talk.
We're just taking some prep. It took like 3 minutes just to get on a call. All right, we'll start prep now.
Never mind.
Okay, are we ready? Can you guys hear me? This is gonna be interesting. I think I'm gonna start on. Where am I gonna start? I'll start on their case, and then I'll get our case. What are we doing?
Robert, stop stealing prep. Come on, bro.
Here. Is my judge ready? Opponent's ready? Okay. Partner ready? Okay. I'll start on their first contention of terrorism, and then I'll go back to mine. Yeah, it's gonna be kind of messy, but we'll see. Okay, on their first contention about terrorism, first off, you can extend. We argue that it's like much better for us to solve it with like legal ways, right? Like we can apply sanctions to these terrorist groups so they can't so they can't get finances. There's like legal ways to deal with this. We don't have to resort to like offensive cyber operations. But then they try to extend the counterintelligence card from like ISAO 19. Like ISAO 19, who's that? Like you've never heard of him, right? But then the NSA tells you that counterintelligence has only stopped 87 cyber attacks over the past, I think, 20 years or something. Yeah. And it's intuitive, right? Like once you use a cyber attack, you can't use it again. Like once you use a cyber weapon, it's gone because then they find the vulnerability and then they patch it, right? So each cyber weapon can only be used once. That's why they can only stop a very limited amount of cyber attacks. We argue that's not the tool, but then you can turn this terrorism contention because we argue that by doing cyber attacks, we give terrorists the weapon to raise more finance through ransomware, right? Because when they have cyber weapons, then they can use this to like steal money from other people. That's a much cleaner way for them to raise money. But then the Navy tells you, like the Navy issues a 170 page report that tells you that overall these like cyber attacks aren't really doing anything, right? Like they read this card from Rogers 18, but Rogers 18 is literally like the guy in command of the US Cyber Command. Obviously, he's going to tell you that cyber attacks are working. Next on to Stuxnet. Remember that overall, we tell you that Iran has increased uranium production. They try to tell you that like it decreased the percentage or whatever. We're telling you that the overall amount of uranium production is actually increased. Like even if they overcompensate, that's still showing that it doesn't actually work. But then their timeline here is completely screwed up. Like Stuxnet was produced 10 years before the Iran nuclear deal. They're trying to tell you that like this Stuxnet thing like somehow affected something a decade later. That doesn't make any sense. But then there's no lasting impact because we argue there's no lasting impact because like they dropped out of the Iran nuclear deal anyways. But then it's non-unique again because we tell you that the conflict is inherently religious. There's always going to be conflict there. So even if they win their link, it doesn't work. But then you can turn this by cross-applying our third contention because we tell you that it actually exacerbates the chance of cyber war, and we'll get to that later. Next, onto our first contention. They read you a bunch of responses. The problem is they don't look at the current situation right now. We tell you that it's uniquely bad because of like the Trump new cyber command that Trump imposed, right? Josephine Wolf, a professor of cybersecurity, literally tells you that like Trump's plan uniquely escalates the chance of conflict. They tell you like it creates a perception of weakness. That's not true. The U.S. can apply other legal forms like sanctions or sanctions or like bringing these people to court. We don't need to use OCOs. But next, moving on to our second and third contention. Oh yeah, and you can probably classify this first contention to their second contention too, because it uniquely escalates it more, right? But then moving on to our second and third contention, our point here is that the U.S. exacerbates the conflict, right? We tell you that it happens more because the U.S. is doing it. Sure, like there was a paradigm shift, it would happen eventually, but we argue that it happens a lot more because the U.S. is doing it. The Secretary of State literally tells you that Stuxnet isn't like Iran used Stuxnet as Iran did something in retaliation to Stuxnet. That's the Secretary of State telling you, and then we tell you that there's a 67% increase in cyber attacks and there's 22 million pieces of malware directly because of Stuxnet, right? We argue that this escalates the Middle East a lot more, and then you can also vote for us here because of recession, because there will be a financial attack. There will be a cyber attack against our financial markets, and that will cause a recession.
Okay, I'll just starting prep now.
Pause prep. Oh, never mind. Okay, so it's going to go my C1. Wait, like 2 more seconds.
Okay, 2 more seconds.
Okay.
All right, so it's gonna be my C1, my C2, and then their case. Something like that, yeah. Okay, I just pull out my timer. everyone good, right? All right. Let my time begin. Now, the way you're voting off, the first voter today is on terrorism, right? They try and tell you that, like, oh, we can like sanction them through like legal means so they can't get money. Well, I would say like they're literally doing like black trade and stuff. It's through illegal means that they get money. Like you can't just like sanction like the black market, right? Like obviously it's going to continue. So I would say like legal means don't really help with ISIS specifically. That's why we tell you it's really important that we have OCOs to actually collect counterintelligence against these against ISIS, so that like the military can do like airstrikes and they can like defeat ISIS. And that's why we tell you, because of like counterintelligence, right? Rogers 18 finds that OCOs are critical to decreasing 98% of ISIS territory, which is why we freed 7.7 million people in the Middle East from ISIS control. I say this is the biggest impact and the most quantifiable impact in today's debate. Like all their extensions on their side are like super sketchy, so we're winning on clarity of impact there. But then they try and tell you like ISAO 19 is really bad. I say no, it's really good, but also we have other evidence. So like you can look to the other evidence in our case. Then they try and turn by saying like cyber attacks raise more finance. Well, I would say overall the benefit is that you decrease 98% of their territory, but I would say it doesn't matter because like ISIS gets most of its money from like oil fields anyways. But then on our contention too, right? They try and like cross apply their case and say that like there's cyber escalation. Even if you buy that there's cyber escalation, well, I would say it's a lot better that like Stuxnet that we had Stuxnet, because sure, there's escalation in the cyber war, but there's no like real nuke war escalation or conventional war escalation. And so I would say like you can't actually, they don't like turn our impact there, and there isn't really an impact to cyber war. But then let's talk about like their case, right? They try and tell you that like, oh yeah, there's going to be a lot of escalation, but I would say like if we didn't do OCOs, that would be even worse, because you can actually turn the argument, because what they completely drop is what Hanote tells you, is that absent US OCOs, you're actually going to be seeing more cyber attacks against the US and more escalation, because now they're thinking the US is super weak. We might as well just spend a lot more money on like, OCOs, so then we can like hack like the US and we can like destroy the US, right? I would say that turns their entire like all three contentions, because that leads to more escalation, that leads to like even more like social spending being pulled out, and that leads to like even more people learning from each other's codes, because like it's not just like that, they can learn from US code, they can learn from like Russia code, they can learn from Chinese code, right? So I would say like hackers overall, they're just going to see more code to steal from. But then like on specifically their impacts, right? I would say all their impacts are like non-unique, right? All they tell you is that like, oh yeah, they can like steal from a bunch of countries, and like that, and they agree that like, it's not just like the US, all they say their impact is that the US exacerbates the conflict, right? More happens because the US does it, other people also do it. But I would say, like I've said before, instead it would actually increase in their world, because absent US OCOs, people would be doing this even more than if the US had no OCOs at all, because they're just incentivized to do it more. At least now, because we have OCOs, they're deterred from doing it, and that's why you see less overall, like you don't see like cyber wars or like people dying from like cyber war, right? And overall, like their extension into recession is super blippy. I say it's like non-unique anyway, so you're like not looking at their impacts. That's why you're outweighing with terrorism. But then back on my case on my C2, they try and like extend the turn on like nuclear enrichment. I say no, you trust our evidence more. Sure, nuclear enrichment increased, but the overall amount of nuke that they had was like decreased.
We're doing Grand Cross, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Do you want to ask, or should I ask you?
Wait, I thought we were gonna.
It's fine.
We're like over time. They're like.
Are we gonna do Final Focus?
Yeah, I think we should just do Final Focus. Don't go for Grand.
Yeah.
All right, just give me like 1 minute then. Okay, is everybody ready? Or like, Sabine, are you ready?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. My time starts now. Okay, the main way you're going to be voting in this round is on escalation. The main thing that my opponents give is this Hinode card, which tells you that somehow because the U.S. isn't attacking other countries, there would be an incentive for countries to attack the U.S. That is simply not true. In this resolution, it's non-topical, but putting that aside, it doesn't even relate because the U.S. using offensive cyber operations is on debate here, not the U.S. using defensive cyber operations. The U.S. can easily use defensive cyber operations to defend against other countries, but what we're specifically talking about here is offensive cyber operations, where the U.S. goes on offense before any country attacks us. We're going out of our way to attack other countries, and the only result here is escalation. We give you a clear example that my opponents dropped the entire round, which is the Secretary of State telling you that Iran turned our Stuxnet technology against us, costing us $20 million. And then we didn't even see an impact from Stuxnet because Iran pulled out of the nuclear deal. Iran increased enrichment from 80 kilograms to 120 kilograms per month. That's substantive evidence there. So there's no impact to benefit for Stuxnet on our side. And then they dropped the fact that there's still religious conflict. And so there's no benefit to Stuxnet as an OCO, but we saw retaliation, 22 million new piece of malware created and $20 million cost to the US economy. That's the one piece of empirics that's going to sway your decision on escalation to our side. That's the empiric they denied ever existed, but does, and many more do. Okay, but then on this idea of terrorism, my opponents are going to try to make this the center of the debate. It simply isn't. They drop a bunch of D-links showing that there's 20, 30 different ways that the U.S. tries to combat terrorism. One is not critical, especially OCOs. In the Navy's 170 page comprehensive document about this, they never mention cyber attacks at all, and instead talk about sanctions, which are much more effective. And then they also drop the turn where we tell you that terrorist organizations are now using ransomware to gain money as well. But then lastly, and so on that idea, you're going to be mitigating their impact on terrorism and voting on escalation, where we show you that the largest impact here is the magnitude of the recession that will happen by 2025. We tell you that if there are more pieces of ransomware, more pieces of malware out because the U.S. is preemptively attacking other countries, it's just going to make this recession worse. And because my opponents have no other thing, in fact, they concede that nobody dies from.
That's like.
Okay. In fact, because they concede that nobody dies from OCOs, you're going to be voting on econ.
You have 20 seconds over. Hannah, if you want, you can go 20 seconds over.
Yeah. Sorry.
You're good.
Okay. Okay. It's gonna go our case, their case. And then Wayne, if I have time. Is everyone good? The ballot today is very clear. On our, we're going for our C1. First, they say that there are 20 and 30 other ways that we can fight terrorists. The critical thing they missed every single speech in this round is the fact that OCOs are the backbone behind all 20 or 30 of these ways that we combat terrorists. For example, not for example, but that's what the evidence in our link 2 indicates, is that we use cyber operations to gather information about terrorists, which is critical because we use this information to basically direct airstrikes, tell us where the troops are, and basically fight back terrorists. That's why Rogers indicates that these were OCOs were critical in fighting terrorism, even if they weren't directly fighting terrorism. We wouldn't be able to beat ISIS and regain free 98% of their land without OCOs. Next, they say that sanctions are going to somehow win land back from terrorists. That makes zero sense because sanctions are a financial strain on terrorists. But the thing is, terrorists operate illegally, and 2, sanctions are going to win back land. And finally, they say that somehow prefer the Navy over a guy who literally works and knows about the OCOs that the U.S. conducts. We would say you're going to prefer Rogers no matter what. The reason why this is critical is because he literally tells you OCOs were the linchpin into freeing 98% of the land from ISIS and freeing 7.7 million people from like saving 7.7 million people from genocide by ISIS. The reason that is critical is because that outweighs every single thing on their case, because you're always going to be preferring lives over the economy. The economy is always going to get better, but you can't win back these lives. On their case, so many things. First, they can see the non-unique. OCOs will be developed no matter what because it's so cheap. The only thing Robert says in summary is that it's somehow going to be worse. They never contextualize how much worse it's going to be. Second, they can see the turn. Countries develop more OCOs in order to gain the advantage over weak US. The only new response they make is in final focus. You can't even evaluate this response. And remember, their impact isn't even like contextualized in summary because they concede the non-unique, which tells you that countries are always going to have cyber attacks insofar as cyber attacks like exist without the US doing them. They said recession is going to be so much worse. How much worse? They give you $20 million. That is minuscule. The US economy is $22 trillion. Like in reality, 7.7 million lives is always going to outweigh every single thing on their case, even if they were able to win every single link. And they only give example that happened decades ago. If anything, this is like, it's just a clear win for us. Like, they mishandle our first contention so much, and they concede so much defense on their impact.
All right, good round, y'all.
Good job.
For the 4 people who are still here, I think we can just listen to Sabine's RFD, and next week we can do the drill with everyone because we shouldn't be like keeping y'all that long. So if you want, you can listen to Sabine's RFD. All this is gonna be recorded, so like do whatever.
I think our impacts are kind of trash, actually.
Yeah, we need.
My extensions in the summary were like, I was like, shoot, I didn't extend impact.
So
I think
the only useful thing from this topic was like getting terror responses.
Okay. Yeah. I wanted to ask about Isawa. I was like,
here's the 7.7 million thing. That's how, like, your final focus. I only heard like the 98% land thing.
No, I extended it in summary.
Oh, okay. I didn't hear that.
Yeah.
Okay, Sabine.
I'm not really gonna spend that long trying to think about my decision, to be honest. I think it's pretty clear. Okay, so I would vote for the AF primarily. I mean, yeah, I guess off of terrorism. I do think the AF mishandles the response to their case that Robert read in summary, which, I mean, it was read in summary. It's like kind of sus to read new responses that are just like defensive responses in summary, or offensive responses in summary. But like, I still flow it and it's still a response. He says that like the NSA determined that our counter intel like didn't really stop that many attacks. Now this card is like very obviously not applicable. It's talking about cyber attacks not stopping conventional terror. Our counterintelligence does stop conventional terror, but like it's still not brought up in their round, and I'm not an interventionist judge who's gonna like say that it's like a bad response and then just not like include it in my RFD. So I think like I don't completely buy that like our OCOs are really crucial to stopping terrorism, but I guess you have a piece of evidence that like directly says that like they were somewhat useful. And I do buy the like analysis that Hannah reads. It's like Rogers you should prefer because he's like a guy who works in cyber operations, like knows what cyber ops are done. Like Ishan says I shouldn't prefer him because like it's in his best interest to say that they're really useful, and I get that. But you also read a card from like a naval officer. Like why would a naval officer know that much about like what cyber operations are doing? Like I think that in terms of like me evaluating how useful they are, a naval officer, it's in his best interest to say, oh, like the Navy is doing great, and so we should just prioritize the Navy. Like obviously every single officer is going to be like my thing is the best thing, but like that doesn't mean that I shouldn't evaluate anyone else's. I don't really get a warrant as to why like cyber operations wouldn't be useful. I just get this analysis that like they're not mentioned in reports, but Hannah tells me consistently, and Nicole brings it up too in her summary, that like they're useful for providing counterintelligence that allow those like things to happen. So even if they're not like directly cited in the reports, I think I get like enough analysis that I can buy that like at least one person's like life was saved by like one of our offensive cyber operations. So I can like kind of vote off of that. On the neg side of the flow, the reason I can't really vote off of anything, there's 2 turns that Hannah reads that talk about perception of weakness. The first one is on Russia specifically, and that one says that like we would have created a perception of weakness if we didn't have offensive cyber operations, because Russia had a stronger like cyber, I guess, space program than us, and so then like Russia would have kept attacking us and we would have just been defenseless. And the second turn she reads is I think it's on the second contention, and it's on the second contention, and it says that like if we didn't develop cyber weapons, then we would look weak, and our adversaries would continue to proliferate their cyber weapons because they could get an advantage in that field that they might not have otherwise in other forms of like the military. So I think that the responses that I get from the neg to this turn are really mishandled, because it sounds like you're responding to the first turn that she reads when you say like it's the uniqueness of like escalation caused by the US, like the US is retaliating against Russia, for example, and that proliferates escalation. But I think that the turn that Hannah and Nicole extend is her second turn, which is talking about how if we had never developed offensive cyber operations, then people would have like increased their overall number of attacks, if that makes any sense at all. But I think that like the turn is in general mishandled, because the idea that like uniquely escalation is happening because the US is there isn't contextualized enough for me to know like why that's something I should vote for. I don't really have like, other than the 22 million pieces of malware thing, or like the fact that and like the amount of money that we lose for each cyber attack, which isn't really cleanly extended in late speeches. I don't have an impact I can vote off of that tells me why like that escalation is bad or what happens as a result of it. I at least get the weighing in like Final Focus, which is like admittedly late, but I at least get some weighing from like Hannah that says like people's lives were saved. But in terms of like permanence, I don't really have like a tangible impact I can vote for on the neg. So yeah, that's it.
Yeah. I think the neg case just doesn't have impacts, actually.
Yeah.
I think
Which is kind of problematic.
Like a good half of your case is like my case, right? That I read at Alta. But I think like most of my wins at Alta on neg relied on like them not being able to respond to the code proliferation and just like having them concede it and then flowing it through.
Yeah, there's nothing to vote for here, actually. I think the only thing you can vote for is recession, but like recession is kind of sketchy.
We should have read the Vanderbilt thing.
Wait, I don't
hundreds of
understand
victims.
the hundreds of turn against my C1. I didn't like he was just like, we can't like defend against like OCOs from their side. Wait, how's that related to like terrorists?
Oh.
Wait, what?
Oh, Robert was talking about like cyber terror. I think that's what that evidence is for.
Oh,
It
yeah.
was like cyber weapons can only be used once.
Oh,
because that actually does make sense. That is like kind of a good response.
Somewhat
but, like,
true.
Wait, how is that related to like?
Also, like, why can't we just develop more?
Because you have to pay money for them.
Yeah.
Like lives are money, right?
It also takes a lot of time, I think. Like, you have to like find bugs.